And a very pleasant welcome to all of you to episode 5 of the QCast. I'm incredibly excited today to have as my guest Jack Sikma, a 7-time NBA All-Star, the all-time leading scorer and rebounder at Illinois Wesleyan, and a member of the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Jack, I know you've done a lot bigger media than the QCast, but I'm certainly thrilled that you are willing to do this. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and don't downplay the QCast for sure, especially when it concerns Division III basketball, which is dear to my heart. So,
Well, I appreciate that. And I know you're busy, and I certainly appreciate the time. And we'll keep this loose today. I'm going to bounce around a lot if that's okay with you. We'll cover a lot of topics from Wichert to the Titans to the CCIW. I've got a lot of stuff on a list for you here, Jack. So just roll with me here today, okay?
you got it.
Hey, let's start somewhat serious before we get into some other topics. The last time I saw you was February 1st, 2020. It was that wonderful night at the Shirk Center where the Titans raised the 44 banner. Titans played Carroll, won a big game. Just a wonderful night all around. And then about a month and a half after that's really, Jack, when the world changed with the pandemic. How have you been doing? How's your family? So your wife, Sean, your 3 boys, how have you guys been doing throughout this whole tough period of time?
All in all, we're doing really well. Again, COVID hit unexpectedly. You think of timing and glad that got back to Wesleyan for the wonderful event. Mike Wagner did a great job putting it on, and it was memorable. It had a lot of friends back and old teammates, and just the connection to Wesleyan's always been so strong, and that starts with Coach Bridges. So it's good. As far as the family's concerned, we got a son playing in Europe. COVID's tough, a lot of time in the apartment, but they're getting through their season. Other 2 sons are here in Seattle and doing well. One's working remotely, and Sean's a real estate agent, a residential real estate agent, and that hasn't slowed down at all. So she's putting in a lot of time and working, and I have my license too, and as I say, I'm her assistant officially. I've been her assistant all my life, but we're enjoying it.
Did you ever think back in 1973 or so that you would make your home in Seattle? It's really become home to you. You've fallen in love with Seattle. People there have fallen in love with you. Did you ever see that coming way back in the day?
No, not in 73. And I still remember when I was waiting on the NBA draft in 77, and a few days beforehand, Lenny Wilkins called Coach Bridges and talked about their interest in me. And then I talked with Coach, and it was a Friday afternoon of the draft. It's a little different back then, where there was nothing televised, and you depended on the Associated Press wire service to fill you in on whether who got taken where. And I still remember the Edgar Alsine was at the Pantograph watching the wire, and I was hoping I went number 8 with Seattle, and then the wire went down. So we waited for about almost an hour, and finally got the phone call, and I was taken by Seattle. So, and it started a great period of time in my life, and it was really life changing. As far as I met my wife out here, it started 40 some years now in the Seattle area.
And we'll get into that a little bit as we go, because you had some amazing seasons with the Sonics. And boy, when you look out there on social media and other places, there's just a core of people that loves that team that you were part of, and that nucleus. So we'll talk a lot about that as we go. Just want to first quickly talk about the Titans, because you were able to be around Ron Rose and the crew last year when you were in town. So you saw them practice, you saw them play. This year, as you know, from our conversations, they won the CCIW championship in a really difficult COVID year. CCIW titles are big deals for the Titans, Jack, and I know that means a lot to you. Just from a perspective of your viewing of the games and following the Titans, what were your thoughts on the title this year?
Well, it was took a lot of fortitude to do what they had to do with all the, the amount of practices per actual games that they were able to play, with everything, up in the air. Didn't know whether they were going to be able to get to the end. Again, Ron's had great success. He has continued to have a successful program, a good recruiter. I really enjoyed being back. That was as close as I've been in a long time to a team playing for the Titans. I got a chance to chat with them the day before the game, and again was impressed with their attention, and then their questions and so forth. It was a good experience, and I left them with the fact that this was a special night for me and Illinois Wesleyan, whatever. I said, don't screw it up, and they sure didn't. They did a great job. They just manhandled Carroll. They played so hard and played together as a team. So very proud of them and what they added to that special moment for me.
It was pretty cool because they were raising the 44 banner, and they held Carroll to 44 points and won the game by 44. So I don't always believe in a lot of weird stuff, but that was a pretty big coincidence and a pretty cool thing that played out that night.
Well, if my number was 2 or 1, it would have been a much more exciting situation as far as the game was concerned. But yeah, it was something when you saw the scoreboard at the end and 88-44. And with the fact that my banner of my jersey was raised on the same night, it was a great coincidence.
You know what I thought was really cool? We'll talk about the CCIW, but sportsmanship. Carroll stayed on the floor during the presentation. I would have assumed that when that started and there were speakers, and I would have thought that maybe like a senior night, they would have gone to their locker room and come back. But not only did Carroll stay on the floor, they were applauding. And I thought that was pretty first class of the Pioneer program to do that.
It was. And again, old nemesis from back playing, Dave Shaw was there, and they had quite a good rooting section. Again, it was a tough night for them, but do appreciate and respect their program. And it was first class how they handled it.
On the women's side of the Titans this year also had a good season, lost in the title game to Milliken. And somewhere along the way, Kendall Sosa scored 47 points. And we joked on Twitter a little bit that she eclipsed your high total of 44, which was pretty cool. And you sent her a nice little shout out tweet. Congratulations. And I think your comment was, you must have passed the ball too much. Is that what your teammates would say, is that you just got too much?
Well, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
But yeah, 47, your comment to me is 47. Wow. So to put 47 on the Big Blue, that was a great night for the Titans. Unfortunately, didn't turn out in the title game, but what a great season by Maya Smith's team as well.
Yes, and Maya's done a fantastic job with that program, and great success, including a national championship. And again, there's a Wesleyan connection at Milliken too with the women's program with
Olivia Lett.
Olivia Lett, their coach, and she's done a great job bringing that program up.
And just a spoiler alert, Olivia will be joining me next on the QCast in a few days, so stay tuned for that as well.
Well, tell her hello and congratulations. As you say, CCIW championships are hard to come by.
Hard to come by. I'd like to kind of go back just a little bit to your high school days. It's funny, some people will say, well, where's Jack Sikma from? And I hear some people say he's from Kankakee, but that's not really quite telling the story, because, you went to St. Anne High School, that's a little off the beaten path of Kankakee over to the east, but you're not really from St. Anne either. You're from up the road from St. Anne in a little town called Wichert. What was Wichert like growing up? I assume that was a farming community. What was it like growing up in Wichert?
Well, it was a real comfortable upbringing. Life was simple, and I say that in a very positive way. It was 6 days a week, working dawn to dusk, farming, lots of vegetable and gladiola farms there, and basically truck farming, taking your goods up to Chicago suburbs. And again, it was hard work. Sunday revolved around in Wichert. It was a Dutch community, and the church was a centerpiece. And the great thing about it was everyone went to church on Sunday morning, but Sunday afternoons was our day, our time for all the, as a kid, you got a chance to play with your buddies. And depending on what time of year it was either pickup basketball, playing baseball. Anyway, it was healthy, and it was a good start. And even though I was a really skinny kid, I still credit my core strength and stuff with just the type of farming activity you had to do. And you were tired at the end of the day, but like I said, it was really a healthy atmosphere. I came from a big family, so I had lots of cousins, and we were all around the same age, and we competed against each other and played hard. And again, in that area and all of Illinois, basketball was really king in the wintertime. And as a youngster, I remember going with my dad to the high school games on Friday nights, and that's my first goal. That was my first big goal. That's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to be on the floor for the high school team, and it worked out.
And you had an enormous growth spurt somewhere in high school, because you weren't always the 5-man on your high school team. Do you remember like when you were a sophomore, how tall were you when you were a junior? When did that huge growth spurt happen?
Yeah, I was 6'1" as a sophomore, and played the wing, faced the basket, decent shooter, and then went to 6'5" as a junior, still played the wing. We had some other guys that played inside, and then grew another 5 inches and was 6'10" and a hulking like 185 my senior year. So moved inside, and again, really hadn't developed much of a post game at that point in time, but I was so much taller than everybody else. It wasn't all that necessary. And the fondest memories were my senior year, alongside my 2 cousins on the front line, Bill and Byron Sikma. We were able to get down to Champaign, and of course that was the high school basketball tournaments. I think that was the second year of the 2-class system. But those weekends, again, watching the teams make it to Champaign and fight for state titles were always one of the big weekends of the year.
And that was a huge deal, back then. And my dad, I grew up in Chicago. My dad played for Pinckneyville, and his teams went to the state 3 times under Duster Thomas. That was in 1 class. And all the way through the 80s and into the 90s, boy, that state tournament was an enormous deal. It still is today, but there's 4 classes. It's a little bit different. But boy, when you were there in 1973 in that A group, that was in competitive field you played in Champaign, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It just the journey to get there. And, the whole town is, like I said, in the winter and the weekends, it's centered around the high school basketball team. And to be able to experience that was lots of fun. And again, when you grow up in a small town, you're playing with all your best buddies, and that was the case there. So to be able to share that was fantastic. And again, growing up over the years, and the whole downstate versus the public league champion, the Catholic League champions, all the come come together in the state tournament. Actually, I misspoke. I don't think the Catholic League actually was involved in the IHSA at that point in time, and they have since. But different styles, very much the coaches, particularly some of the downstate teams, were well known, and there were so many good coaches. When you think about it, especially in small towns, you have different types of players coming through all the time. You have to adjust your system to it. And like I said, it was a great brand of basketball, and it was so big in the state of Illinois.
In terms of your recruiting, do you recall at what point, was it your junior year? Was it your senior year that the college coaches really started knocking on your door? At what point was that?
It wasn't, there was nothing my junior year. Again, growing from 6'5" to 6'10" changes some of the outlook as far as maybe where your potential could go. And that's where I credit, a lot of credit goes to Coach Bridges. He was one of the first coaches. He saw me in Chatsworth tournament my senior year, which was the holiday tournament. And he wrote me a letter right after and said, "Hey, I want you to come to Wesleyan. He said, you'll be the best player that ever played here." And
story checked out, right?
Yeah. And he said, "I know that you still got a lot of season left, but I'm going to stay on you and recruit you hard. I think we're a good place for you." He had the benefit of knowing that I had my older sister was at Wesleyan at the time, so he knew that I had a connection there. And just to talk about the commitment from Coach, he saw me first at Christmas holiday tournament. He's coaching the Titans. He's scouting the opponents. He's recruiting other players, and he came and saw me 10 times in person in a 2 or 3 month period. And I think that set the tone for the level of commitment he had to me. And though the decision, I had some choices, the decision was a tough one, but it came down to that was the most comfortable place for me. And I understood the value of the commitment he had to me, and I made a good decision.
And we're very glad that you made that decision. I'm just curious, at the end, you were deciding between Illinois Wesleyan and probably a couple big schools. Who was the most in the conversation at the very end for you?
Illinois, and there was some connection there too. Harv Schmidt was a coach, and he grew up in Kankakee and was one of the legends in that area. The program was down a little bit, and possibility of redshirting, which made a lot of sense. I needed to develop, and again, it was a tough decision. I grinded on it for a long time, and finally, when I made it, I was relieved. And again, it had to do with I wanted to develop on the court, and so playing time was a big part of it. And I was very competitive, and the thought of sitting out a year, even though you're practicing and so forth, and I felt I could get better by being on the court. So that was a big part.
So you commit to Illinois Wesleyan, and I have this kind of grouped out in sections, and the next section of my conversation with you is called Bob Spear. So you're gonna have to roll with me here. So Dr. Bob Spear on Twitter, folks, at Sport Theory 101. I didn't know Bob until a couple of years ago when he got on Twitter. I didn't realize who he was at first. I knew his name for a long time. And I started encountering this super witty, brilliantly snarky, sarcastic, funny guy. And I finally connected the dots on who he was. Oh my gosh, that's the guy that played with Jack in class of 77. He's a doctor. He's done incredibly well. Was Mr. Spear always this way, Jack? Was he always this kind of quick, witty, snarky type? What are your first recollections of Bob Spear?
Well, again, it had a good class of players coming in. Michael Bradley was an all-stater. Bob was an all-stater. I was an all-stater. So, there was a little bit of a feeling out period. Bob and I pledged the same fraternity, so got to know him through our pledgeship besides the basketball court. But yeah, it was always there. Actually, I didn't know him at the time, but got to know his dad, George, as time went on. And he's a spitting image of his dad, who was really quick with the quip and had that sense of humor or whatever. And he kept the locker room loose. If you would talk to Coach Bridges about some of the funniest moments or great lines that were said, in reaction to something he said to a player or one player to another player, he could write a book on Bob Spear quips. So there was plenty of them, and they still are. We have a great group of guys that stay in touch and get together annually, and the banter back and forth is just as lively and entertaining as always.
And I know that Dr. Spear has built a Twitter persona around some of his defensive philosophies, and he's always talking about denying the inbounds pass. And this is our chance, Jack. We got to ask you, did you ever see Bob Spear denying an inbounds pass? Does that story check out? Yes or no?
He usually did, and if there was any contact, he would flop. So if you get away with that, then maybe there's some sense to it, though. I think people will catch on pretty quick. But he was one of the best guys to go down. You'd think he was shot or something. But
now he'd get the flop signal.
Yes, you do.
And I know that you've stayed close to that group of guys. You mentioned the endowment that a group of them are part of, related to coaches Bridges and Keck and Larson and Edgar Alcine. And so you've really stayed close with that group that you were part of there back at IWU.
Yeah. Again, Jeff Solberg kind of spearheaded that, and there was a number of other Wesleyan alums in that era who have established this endowment. It's really amazing to think that the whole Wesleyan athletic department out of Fred Young Fieldhouse, and we always called it the girls' gym, which is now transformed into a fantastic student center. But Coach Hornberger, Coach Larson, Coach Keck, Coach Bridges, Coach Cothran, the women's who coached everything basically for the women, and then Mr. Alcine, who did such a great job of promoting Wesleyan and from the sports end of it. They are legends, and the length of time in which they all coached has left a dramatic impact on the history of Wesleyan sports, and set a great tone for how to continue on.
Let's talk about Coach Bridges just for a couple minutes. I always wanted to ask you if in 2001, when you went to Salem, Virginia to the Final Four, that was the first time I believe that actually the second time that I met you, because I met you when I was in college. But in 2001, did you know when you were going to Salem that was Denny's final games at that point? I suspect that you did, but I've never asked you that before.
Yes, I did. And I knew that this was going to be it, and he was just going to wear the athletic director hat. It was a lot, let's say, more comfortable for being a Wesleyan alum involved in the sports program to know that he was just going to take one hat off, but still leave one on and run the athletic department, especially with the coming of the Shirk Center and all of that. And I can't remember if Coach was the first to tell me, or Coach Esch, who was a football coach and close friend of mine, went to school together in that era, and had mentioned it to me. So we planned on getting together in Bloomington and then taking the flight to Salem. So yeah, and I was glad I was there. And though they didn't, take down the banner, it was still another trip to Salem, and team played well, and it was great to be part of that.
I suspect you know this, but it's probably worth making sure you know for sure. But boy, the pride that Coach Bridges takes to this day in you is really something that's very, very cool. I remember taking theory and practice of basketball my senior year. Jack, I had a very rigorous course load my senior year, and Coach Bridges was the instructor. And boy, I remember a whole class that was on the Sikma Move, and I remember him talking about the impact that Jack Sikma had on the Titans, and just telling the story. And that's just one very tiny example. But over the years, boy, you talk about a proud Papa figure. I mean, Coach Bridges has been so proud of your association with the Titans. And I know that your relationship with him has been just extremely close for a long period of time now.
Yeah, one of my closest friends, definitely my key mentor in life, as far as, especially from the basketball side of it. And that's continued throughout and will continue. And we talk about Wesleyan a lot and the programs and what's going on. We talk about golf a little bit, and of course, Coach is still as competitive as ever at that. So it's been a wonderful relationship. And again, I owe it all to Coach in the fact that it happened because of his will and commitment to me from the very beginning, and that can't be replaced. So
absolutely, well said. Just let's talk about the league a little bit, the CCIW. It's always been such a great small college basketball league. It is today. It's one of the absolute top Division III leagues. At the time, it was one of the best combination Division III NAIA leagues. And I'm sure that when you got to the NBA, coming from a little school, that people thought that you were playing against like 6'3" post players. But it's funny, you look back, there was 6'11" Leon Gobzinski in the league your first 2 years, who's the all-time leading scorer in the CCIW, 6'11". Augustana had Bruce Hamming, who was outstanding. I think he was there your first 2 years. I think he was Gobzinski's age. Talk a little bit about those two guys and coming into the league as this highly touted 6'10" skinny kid going up against some really good post players in the CCIW.
Yeah, well, it was challenging, especially as a freshman, just getting your feet wet and so forth. And again, Augustana had come off some great years, and I think John Lang had just graduated, but he and Hamming were twin towers, both 6'11", 7 foot. And then Leon was such a great scorer in the post, and a great shooter, and had size. So yeah, it was competitive. And I cut my teeth on. I was probably in foul trouble the majority time my freshman year, especially going up against those guys. But there were. I just was thinking about it. We played good Wheaton teams. Randy Fund, who
Right.
was a senior when I was a freshman, who was connected with the NBA and as a coach and front office guy. And of course, his dad was Lee Fund was one of the great coaches in CCIW lore. But there was good players. Dave Rosenbaum and Carthage and Shaw at Carroll. Those were always competitive games, and to go up for the Wisconsin weekend and play them back to back was always a big challenge. I'm proud of this CCIW and the level of play, and it's apparent. We were an NAIA team, and Kansas City was our goal. But when you look at the Division III NCAA tournaments now, and just the place that the CCIW has in them, and usually lands 2 to 3 teams in the championship, says a lot for the league.
And right after you left, North Park had that national championship three-peat with that incredible nucleus. Were you aware? I know you were in the NBA at that time, but I'm sure you were aware that North Park had built this dynasty on the north side of Chicago.
Yeah, Michael Harper, of course, who I didn't see play because I was in the NBA, but got a chance to catch up with him once he got in the league a few years later. And I think it was Michael Thomas and Coach McCarroll, of course, had been around for such a long time, and it was great to see that level of success and bring NCAA Division III championships to the CCIW.
And one thing that CCIW fans are really proud of is the year before you got there, Augustana with Lang and Hamming went 16-0 in 1973. It's the last time that any team has gone undefeated in league play. And as Bosko Jurikovic, the longtime North Park Carthage coach, he said the Sikma teams didn't do it. The North Park national champs didn't do it. The Illinois Wesleyan national champs and Final Four, all of these great teams along the way, no one's found a way to go undefeated. And that probably says as much as you need to know about how good the league is.
Yeah, and I remember my senior year, we went to Augustana, and that's where we lost. I still Cecil Youngblood played for them, and quite a character. And I still remember the celebration as we walked off the court. And of course, there was a little pride there with
Sure.
Augustana being the last 16-0 team, and they wanted to make sure it didn't happen. But road games were always competitive, and teams, when you're the top dog, in other words, we won the championship a couple times and so forth, you had to be ready to go. And I think Bob Spear should have tried to flop 1 or 2 more times, and maybe would have made a difference.
Needed a call.
Needed a call.
Of course, those days, your path was NAIA, and that didn't change till like 83, 84. But I think you went 3 times to Kansas City, and that was a big deal. That tournament at the time, the current state Titans that weren't around then, including me, don't have a full appreciation. That NAI tournament at that point, it's still a good tournament. That was a huge deal to get there. And I think when you got there, you would say that the teams you were playing there were much closer to current Division I teams than small college teams. What was that environment like when you went to Kansas City those years?
Well, it was, you had to fight for your district title. There was 32 districts, and it was a 32 team tournament coming from all over the country. And basically you played every night, and that Kemper Arena was just games all day long. They did a great job of every team had a host and help them out through the week. So it was basketball at its finest. And the 1 year we lost to Grand Canyon and Bay Air Forest, who made the league, went up against him. My senior year, that was where the radar for the Sonics really started. Bob Hopkins, who ended up being my first coach there, was their main scout, and he saw me play at Kansas City and took it back to Seattle in their front office. I was on the board then. So one of my big memories about Kansas City happened before Kansas City, and that was the pressure of my senior year when we played Quincy at our place to go to Kansas City. And Quincy was coached by Cheryl Hanks, who was Bob Spears' former high school coach. So there was a lot of connection there. Bob's teammate, Larry Moore, who had transferred back from Iowa to Quincy, was their star player. And Bob volunteered to guard him. He wanted a piece of him. The game came down to it was tied, and we had a shot to win it in regulation. And Al Black looked me off and took the shot, didn't make it. I'm giving Al a hard time. Anyway, he said I screwed it up by touching it while it was still on the rim. But anyway, we started the overtime period, and I made a shot. It was kind of an ugly shot. It bounced around on the rim and went in. And Quincy went into a stall and stalled out the game till about 30 seconds, and they missed the shot, and we were able to hang on and get to Kansas City. So that was a lot of pressure, because coach always said that would have been the worst, Sikma senior year, and we don't make it to Kansas City. So we got there. We ran into a Henderson State team, and their quickness bothered us a little bit. We didn't play all that well, but anyway, it was a great experience, and like I said, more exposure for me.
A year before that was a U.S. Olympic year, and I only know this was a thing from reading Denny's book, A Dunk Only Counts 2 Points. Denny, I think, was very clearly disappointed that you didn't make the Olympic team. I believe the final big man spot came down to you and another player, and Dean Smith was the coach of the team, legendary college basketball coach, obviously. And was the Olympic team a thing for you then? Did you know you were in the conversation, or was that more of a Denny thing, or what was your recollection of the 76 Olympic team decision?
I had a really good Olympic camp, and they ended it with, they split us up into 4 teams, and we had a little kind of intramural competition at the end, and I played really well, and I went up against my future teammate, Tom Lagarde, 1-on-1. And actually, I thought I won the battle. But when it came down to it, and I think Coach Smith was a fan of mine, but he wasn't the only decision maker. Definitely the biggest voice, but I think they decided to go with someone they were more familiar with. I was disappointed. It would have been at Illinois Wesleyan University. Someone for me to get that kind of exposure would have been great, but it really set me up for my off season before my senior year. And I felt like I really took another step as far as becoming a better player. I definitely was in the best shape of my life during that off season, and I started to add a little weight and get a little stronger, which was beneficial, especially when you move to the league. And we had a pre-season training run. I had to run a half mile and against my teammates, and I think I came close to setting the Wesleyan record in the half mile. At least that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So the guys will get a kick out of that. But anyway, it really was a springboard for me, and I came back my senior year And I think, like I said, I was in great shape, and had a really good season. And we played some big schools, held my own, or more than held my own. And again, at the end of the year, I had a good enough year where I got to play in the coaches All-American game in Tulsa, and Bobby Knight was the coach, and he kind of during games said, "Now, where did you come from? Who recruited you?" Because I was right across the state line from him, and so I filled him in. And then we had the Aloha Classic, so I got to go to Hawaii, and we played 3 or 4 games. And Bo Ellis, who had played for Marquette, who had just won the national championship, we were on the same team, and we were in the car going to our last game. And he looked at me, he says, "Big guy, you made some money. You made some money this weekend." So anyway, I had a good weekend at the Classic. And again, I end up being the 8th pick in the draft. Who knew?
And the Sikma Move, we need to talk about the Sikma Move. I believe that came about after your freshman year at Illinois Wesleyan. Is that about the timing when you started working on that? Does that sound correct?
That's correct. At the end of the season, again, part of it was moving from outside to inside. I got tied up with the guys I was going against, and they'd body me. And again, I was still really skinny, and had trouble handling that. So at the end of the year, coach sat me down and said, "Hey, Jack, we gotta figure out a go-to move for you in the post, because you getting the ball to have an indecision gives the defense time to react and all that." So anyway, I think we spent 3 weeks to a month trying different things. Coach had idea that he got from some downstate coaches used it, where you would do the inside pivot to create some space. And the first time I tried it, I thought there was some opportunity there. I'd like to be able to get away from my defender. And so after trying it for a while, we committed to it, and coach was adamant: "Do your move, do your move, do your move." And so we worked on it before practices diligently. We used a chair at first, just to kind of help me with movement and making sure, I had to do some lateral work as far as putting the ball down. But I think our mix was every 5th shot, I had a pump fake and go around and make a move to the basket. So part of the concept too was they start over playing it, you have to have a counter. And it, repetition, that kind of thing. And then we started the season, and I get in games, and it wasn't natural yet. And
it's like golfing, right? As you're working on things at the range, and then you go to the course and it doesn't work.
And yep. And so coach would be screaming from the sideline, "Do your move, do your move, do your move." And I remember a game at Elmhurst. It was like early December, probably our 5th, 6th, 7th game of the year. And the first half started, I got the ball in the post, I did the move, made it. I think I was like 9 for 12 in the first half. And it was never a second thought after that. It just was, you got the reinforcement, you put in the time, and it was off to the races. And again, no one had any idea what kind of impact that would have in my career and how far that would help me go in my career. It took me to places that couldn't even dreamed of at that point in time.
This year, throughout the college basketball season, your name and the Sikma Move came up quite a few times, because the National Player of the Year, Luka Garza, was kind of on record as saying that he grew up like watching old VHS tapes of great centers, including Jack Sikma. several times throughout the season, he would do inside pivot, make a 7-foot baseline shot, and someone would call you out. Were you aware of the Luka Garza thing as the season went on? Had anyone mentioned that to you?
Yeah, I knew it. And actually, at the end of his junior year, when he won the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award after his junior year as best center, and there was a contact there that got a hold of me. So I went on a radio interview with him remotely, and his father was also there with him. And his father played, I think, at Lewis, or one of the. It wasn't a CCIW school, but it was a school that we played. It might have been even in the district playoffs. And he was really a mentor and worked out with Luka a lot and did other people's moves. So he was a big proponent of the Sikma Move. So it was really a great interview. And will be interesting to see. There's kind of whether he can convert all that to the NBA. I know he'll do the work. And but yeah, I followed Luka quite a bit here in this last year.
And I want to get back to your championship team in Seattle, but just since we're on the topic of centers, I was looking at a list in preparation for this of the best centers of all time. Someone created a list, the best 50, and you're on that list, as you should be. And I think I counted just unofficially as I was going down the list, I think you played with 25 of them. That is
yes.
amazing. Like, you played in the golden era of the 5-man, the center. And I just can't imagine. I want to add, what was it like night in, night out in the NBA to go up against all of these talented centers that were in your era?
And I learned this just in the last couple of days because I did a podcast for a Sonics channel where they're bringing all the Sonics players back and pretty in depth talking about their careers and so forth. And I played in like 1,100 some games, and 540 of them were against Hall of Famers.
Wow.
My matchup. So it was a golden era of big men. The league has since changed the rules a little bit. So you can't just be a power guy. You're got to have a set of skills, which I think I would have dealt with really well as far as being able to shoot with range and that kind of thing and be a spacer. But it was also a time where you had your personal matchup. There wasn't a lot of scheming as far as taking the ball out of the guy in the post and whatever. You had a one-on-one battle. And especially, I would say it was a little tougher because recovery was tougher at the end of my career, just as you age. But in the middle of my career, I mean, you'd come to the locker room totally exhausted. It just was a battle, both physically, where you're carrying around big guys and just banging with them and that kind of thing. So it made me a better player. It was really the reason, recognizing this, just the age of the centers that I played against. It was the main reason I had asked Kareem to represent all the big guys that I went up against when I was as a presenter for the Hall of Fame award. I'm glad I didn't think about it too much while I was going through it. But now, looking back,
pretty amazing.
It was, and I'm very proud of it. Just the level of competition made me better, and hopefully I made them better.
Is it fair to say that list of great centers, that I don't know what order they're in, but Kareem and Moses Malone would have to be near the top of that group that you faced?
Yeah, and I think their accolades show it. They're two different types of players, and there was tons of centers that played differently, and that was part of it too. I mean, you're guarding Issel out at the 3-point line, and giving that pump fake and diving to the rim on the drive, or shooting it, and then you got Lanier laying all over you. You got Gilmore, who just rock hard body, and just he pivoted and just it would a little bump and it would hurt. And so strong in there. So and then I'm just touching a few of them. You got Parrish, you got Walton. It's just night in, night out. It was just a ton of players and ton of great players. So I survived it. I look back now, it was kind of like survival.
Right.
And like I said, you're just so competitive, so focused on your job, you just had to go out and do it. And again, a successful battle, a successful night was like against Kareem, 14 for 28, and maybe only 6 free throws, but he missed 14 too. And even though he may have scored 30 some points, you made him work for it. And then that's really what you had to do.
The 79 season, when you won the championship with the Sonics, well, your first year, your rookie year, you got to the NBA finals. So you played, I think it was the Bullets both years. You lost your first year in 78 in a great series. 79, you guys come back, same matchup in the finals. You win that one. I just always wondered, I went back and watched some of these games over the pandemic when we're all watching various things just to get by. And I always wondered if was there pinch me moments in 78 and 79? I mean, 1 minute you're playing Elmhurst and the next minute you're guarding West Unseld. And I mean, was there a little bit, or were you just so settled in that you were just kind of doing your job at that point?
Two things, naive, which was good. It's good to be naive in some situations. Also, I was really focused on establishing my career. I felt like all the hard work I put in, particularly that last year at Wesleyan, to get myself in the best position to be drafted, and then for that to be successful, where I landed in a team that fortunately was not the top of the league. So there was opportunity as far as to get out in the court. And I didn't get out in the court right away. It wasn't until like the 21st game that I started for the first time. But we were, such a young team, and it kind of turned around and snowballed. The Seattle Coliseum was just a madhouse that second half of the year, because we were, turning things around, and you play with lots of emotion. It was just a great basketball setting, and I didn't realize it, how much it was at the time. The other thing is being fortunate to be on a team that made it to the finals my first 2 years in the league. That experience in playoff basketball, I played 22 games my rookie season in the playoffs, and 17 more the following year. So to play almost a half a season more in playoff situations really was, I think, a key springboard to my early success in the league, and making those all-star teams. And I made those all-star teams with tremendous amount of competition. There was a lot of Hall of Famers that didn't make those all-star teams when I made them. So landing in Seattle, and then for that to happen, it was really a fortunate thing for me.
When you got traded to the Bucks, there was some chatter, if you look back now, and I wanted to ask you if you think this was legit or not. There was chatter about the Bulls potentially trading their number 1 pick in 85 or 84 to the Sonics for Jack Sikma. The Bulls ended up drafting a pretty good player with that number 1 pick. Was conversation about the Bulls something you were aware of back when you were in Seattle? Was that a thing that you were aware of?
Yeah, I was aware of it a little bit. And actually, it wasn't, the Bulls never were considering the trade if Jordan was available. It was if Hakeem went and won, if the Trailblazers decided to take Jordan at 2, then Sam Bowie would be the logical 3rd pick, and that's who Seattle would have taken on that trade. I would have got traded for the 3rd pick of the draft, but it wasn't for Jordan. And that's barely the right move for the Bulls to make.
Well, we can debate how it turned out either way. I don't know. I'm just a South Side Chicago kid watching Michael Jordan. I think Jack Sikma wins the titles too. I don't know. We're just going to roll with that. Later in your career, 1987, early in the pandemic, again, people playing things on TV and Netflix that they probably wouldn't normally. There was a really cool thing with Kevin McHale and some other people reviewing the 1987 Eastern Conference semifinal game, Bucks Celtics, Boston Garden. Incredible game. You guys were up maybe 10 with 7 minutes to go, maybe 3 with 3 minutes to go. Bird hit some shots. A lot of great things were happening on both sides. What are your memories of the environment at the Boston Garden in that game 7? That must have been pretty incredible.
It was incredible. We had a great opportunity to win. We were down 3-1 in that. Went to game 5 and beat the Celtics. Came home and won. In a tremendous battle. I remember I had a tip that right in the front of the rim that popped out. I shot. I think it was a series. I went 35 for 35 from the line, which is, I think, the best in a 7-game series. Actually, Sports Theory was at the game.
Mr. Bob Spear was in the Boston Garden.
He came up from Washington. He was at Johns Hopkins at the time and came up and actually. We had a little time before the plane left, so we went and got a bite to eat. And then there was so much traffic, he made me miss my airplane back. So I ended up having a fine for missing the commercial flight. But I got in later, and again, the season was over, so it wasn't bad. But I still Bob owes me for that one. But yeah, it was a really great series, and I think the Celtics went on, and that was the I may be wrong, but that was the year that Detroit could have clinched it, and Bird stole the pass and DJ made the layup. So anyway, but that was the type of competition we were playing in the East at that time. There was a lot of good teams there.
Do you feel, when you look back, and I'm biased because as a kid, I grew up watching that era that you played in. And so I'm biased to that was the golden era of the NBA. I think probably we all relate to when we watched it or were part of it. As you watch the league now, it's a very different league. Incredible talent up and down the NBA, obviously. Do you feel like your era was the great era of the NBA, or is it like apples and oranges versus what's going on today?
Yeah, I think it's apples and oranges. I think the athletes are bigger, faster, stronger now than they were, but they've got tremendous amount of support. I mean, the science behind it, the analytics behind it, the recovery. I don't think players play the minutes they used to play, that more dependent on depth. I think what's required of them from a media standpoint is tremendous. From social media to pregame, postgame, it's just so much sports information that people want, and so that's definitely tougher. I just really respect for them for dealing with the COVID crisis and the bubbles and handling this. Maybe the only saving grace for them is the fact that the amount of media that they have to do is restricted. But still, I was with Toronto up until last year as a consultant, and they're a team that their home games now are in Tampa area. I mean, just think about getting through a season like that and then dealing with COVID protocol and COVID cases. And so I know that's just particular. We'll get through this, but the demands are greater. The support is much greater. It's a huge business, and just worldwide now. The NBA touches so many people.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions as we start to wrap it up. And thank you so much for all the time. I wanted to ask about your transformation at the end of your career to the beyond the arc. I was looking at your stats. In 1988, you shot 14 threes. So you shot 14. I'm not sure if those were within the offense or it was like shot clocks going down. Jack's got the ball. We shoot the three. You made 3 of them. In 1989, you shot 216 threes and you made 82, which is 38%. Great. What was the transformation there from 88 to 89 in where your shots were coming from?
Well, when I went to Milwaukee, my first year, Nelly was a coach, and he then practiced with shooting games and 3-point game. He was a big believer in using the 3-point shot. So the big guys shot him too. And I made my share. I was on the winning team a good share of the time. And then as Del Harris took over, and maybe not that first season, but started to think about court spacing. And we had a couple players on the team that were good in the post who were smaller. Terry Cummings liked to post up the small forward. Ricky Pierce would come in and the 2-guard, and Sidney had started all that because they used Sidney Moncrief out of the post when I first got to Milwaukee. So anyway, the space the 5, and if he can shoot it, and that year it was kind of new to the league, so those looks were really good looks in the sense of there was a lot of people sagging off and whatever, and then by the end of the year I was more closely guarded, but that was before analytics and that whole thing, but now if you got that skill, it's really important to be able to knock those shots down. And the other thing about it, when you're the big and you're shooting those, it's usually not the corner, which is a little bit closer and a little bit easier. You're at the wing angles, or maybe trailing, coming at the top of the key. So most of my shots were right in that area. But yeah, I missed being in the post, but I wanted to be out in the court. So if that was another way for me to get some more court time, I'm going to hoist it up there.
And you were always a really good shooter. I mean, free throws, I went looking at, best career free throw percentage for centers. Dirk Nowitzki 1, 0.879, Jack Sikma 2, 0.849, all-time NBA center free throw.
Yeah, Dirk's a 4.
He's a 4. They listed him as an F/C, so I had to go with it, Jack. But I agree with you. He's clearly a 4. So we're going to say that Jack.
I've actually had a conversation with Dirk.
Yeah,
when I was coaching and so forth, and his thing was, he's the best 7-foot free throw shooter. I said, yeah, but you're a 4. I was a 5. So anyway.
I think we're going to go with that. You were the all-time leading center free throw shooter, 849. I saw a tweet yesterday, and someone said, I think it's because people were missing free throws in the NCAA tournament game, and someone tweeted, "Are free throws natural ability or practice?" What would you say to
that? I think shooting form and all that kind of stuff comes more naturally to some people. And but it's definitely practice and focus and concentration. There's a little it sounds like a Bob Spear sports theory scenario, but if you think about it, when you're a young kid and your release point was much lower and you had to hoist it up in the air and get it crawl over the rim, but how soft that was. So I'm a big believer in the lower your release point, the softer and the better free throw shooter you should be. So if you notice when I shot free throws, I shot the Sikma Move from above my head.
Right. You kind of felt
But I shot free
throws too. Didn't you have a
Yeah.
little lean?
Well, right. But I shot my free throws from here,
Right.
which is a little bit lower release point, closer out in front of me, closer to the basket and so forth. So I think there is some physics that are a detriment for big guys because they're releasing it from a higher plane. So instead of up and over, it's a little bit less arc. So there's a little, doesn't that sound like a sports theory?
That sounds like Bob Spear just answered
Yeah.
that on Twitter. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
He'll be proud of that. Couple more things and then we'll wrap it up. You had two huge honors here in the last several years. The first, you get inducted into the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. I know that you were on site with John McCarthy's group to accept that honor. That was a pretty cool experience for you to be rewarded because I know you're proud of your small college heritage. That must have been a nice honor for you.
It was a great honor, and really enjoyed it down in Evansville. They did a really nice job, and I had a nice group of supporters. I hadn't seen Chris Eldridge for a number of years, and he was in Memphis. I think Al Black got a hold of him, and so they came to Evansville along with some of my other teammates and so forth. The other thing that was pretty unique about it, and actually he was wonderful with my group of friends, but I went in with Bob Love, and I grew up watching Bob Love play for the Bulls, and he's got quite a story. Connected here with Seattle, he played with the Sonics, and he was on the down and outs, and he ended up working at Nordstrom's, and then Jerry Krause hired him in Chicago, and he was just so grateful for everything and so good with our guys. So that was a special part of it too. Which I mentioned it or mention it as the Hall of Fame class. It was a bunch of guys that maybe were overlooked for a while, but I played with Bobby Jones. I played against Bobby Jones, teammates of Moncrief and Westfall. And so that made it special too.
The Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame, you know, that for a long time, whenever I would see Coach Bridges, at some point it would always come up that you had been forgotten in this process. And he would always recite the stats of why you were a no-brainer Hall of Famer. And at some point, momentum picked back up and you get that call. I mean, I can't imagine, what was that like when you found out that after all those years that you were going to be in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame?
Well, it was a wonderful morning. It was like, I think it was 3 days before the Final Four, and then you go to the Final Four for the official announcement. I was in my regular morning routine. I'm a Pacific Coast time, and they tell you that you're going to get a call between 9 and 10 o'clock, and you're going to get a call whether you made it or not. So the call itself doesn't guarantee anything. So I usually bring my wife a cup of coffee in the morning, and she's getting up, and then I had mine poured and was watching business news, kind of waiting for the call, and I see the caller ID in Springfield, Mass. So I pick it up and then hear the great news, and it wasn't jumping for joy. It really, for me, it was a time to kind of look back and take it all in and how many people touched me and helped me in the journey, and family and the support, and how fortunate I was. So that was kind of the first take on it, and then sharing the news with so many people and hearing from so many people, and then so many invited from hometown to Wesleyan to Seattle to Milwaukee to whatever, wherever my journey took me, have so many people come and experience the weekend with me was fantastic.
And I encourage people to go to YouTube and look for Jack's enshrinement speech. It's very well done. You can hear that there are many Jack Sikma fans there in the building, which was really cool. You had the biggest crowd by far, which was great. And just for context, I went and looked at of all the players that played for colleges and universities in the state of Illinois. Illinois is a hotbed of hoops. But all of the players, here's the list of the Hall of Famers. There's 2 from the University of Chicago in 1909, Pat Page and John Schommer, 1909. Andy Phillip, Illinois, 43. George Mikan, DePaul, 45. Chet Walker, Bradley, 62. Walt Frazier, Salukis, 67. And Jack Sikma, Illinois Wesleyan, 77. That's pretty crazy, Jack. I mean, to think you're on a list here of, what did I read? 7. You're one of 7 that have played in the state that are in the Hall. It's got to be a pretty crazy feeling, huh?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Coach Bridges brought that up actually at Wesleyan when we had that weekend with hanging my jersey from the rafters there. Especially when you think about how good Illinois basketball is. Yeah. And, there's a lot of Illinois players that are in the Hall of Fame that didn't go to Illinois schools, of course. But anyway, it's an interesting take, and especially when you think about, just the schools that were mentioned, and again, who knew that what an improbable journey, but what a great journey it was. And again, who knows what could have happened if decisions were made different ways, not deciding on coming to Wesleyan with Coach Bridges' commitment and the work he did to convince me that this was a great place. Getting drafted by Seattle, who knew? Met my wife in Seattle and raised a family here. There's just, sometimes it's good decisions, sometimes it's dumb luck. But anyway, I got here, and I couldn't be more happy about how it turned out, and so grateful for it. So, and I think my speech, that's what I really wanted to portray in my speech at the Hall of Fame, and hopefully I did a good job with that.
And it was, again, go to YouTube, guys, and really check out that speech, because it is extremely well organized and very heartfelt. I'll give a final thought, Jack, and then I'm going to give it to you for any final words. I would just say thank you for all this time. This is a lot of time. I know you're busy. I covered a lot of stuff, but I wanted the folks that were going to tune in to get a chance to hear all these different pieces, and they can listen to it as they get time. I would also say, as an Illinois Wesleyan grad, we're so fortunate that you've been so dedicated to the school over the years. Throughout your NBA career, since then, you have been so connected to Illinois Wesleyan. We appreciate that. We're proud of you, obviously, to be part of a school, Division III school, NAIA school, and have an NBA Hall of Famer or Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Famer. That's pretty crazy stuff. We're proud of what you've done on and off the court, and really appreciate your dedication to Illinois Wesleyan. And I'll turn it over to you, Jack, for any final thoughts for those listening.
Yeah, I got to make a shout out to one of my teammates, Eddie Moore, and his wife Julie, because they got a Sikma room for me every time I come back to Bloomington, and great hosts. I forgive you, Eddie, for looking me off in the Milliken game. So on the last second shot, which thank God you made. And hopefully, there's reasons for me to, well, there's always reasons, but hopefully I can make it back again this fall sometime when the new season starts and fans can be back in the gym and watch Coach Rose and the Titans crank it up again and hopefully end the season with another CCIW title.
I appreciate that. And I think if you come back in the fall to watch the Titans, you'll be very pleasantly surprised because they are loaded and they're ready for another run next year. So Jack Sikma, the all-time leading scorer, rebounder at Illinois Wesleyan, a 7-time NBA All-Star, a member of the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Can't thank you enough, Jack, for all of this time. I hope to see you very soon, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob. It was lots of fun. Appreciate it.